and uh, thank you for joining us. Today we have a new member of the crew. We are now Raffaella Sage and team, and today we are going to make a code review about another ticket that we have chosen. And our mainly goal is to help people to make a better code review and also show our process and how we make some decision uh, and how it's and help, we hope to help you as well.
Yes. Yeah. Um, Hi, I'm Tim, one of the other space reviewers. And Sage, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello. Yeah, I'm Sage, a member of the Django community, I suppose. And yeah, today this is my first Djangonaut space reviewers session. So let's see
Yeah.
how it goes.
Woohoo. Yes. Um, yeah. So this review session is typically we take a PR that is in some various state of review. Uh, Today, we are looking at a PR that is handling a migration operation called RemoveField, and it's supposed to add a default to it. It'll be a little bit different than what we've done in the past, in that the code and documentation for this look pretty good, but I think we will have to go through some more of the evaluation of the code, which we've tried in the past, haven't made it really far, so I think this will be a nice mix-up for us. Um, and Raffaella, she already explained um, we do this to help expose the process, try to make it a little bit more accessible. Um, yeah, hopefully this helps people understand how some other people might approach code reviews. And so you can use that in your own professional world or review some Django PRs too.
We
Go ahead, Rafaela.
okay. Can I? We also would like to make a call to help us to choose a next PR that we could be used in our next online review. And you can find out this form inside our GitHub repository, or maybe inside the description of the YouTube channel.
That is a good note. I don't know if let me. Yeah, if we don't have that, we'll have it next time. Yeah, and the last thing is please be respectful. We're operating under the Djangonaut Space Code of Conduct. The link is also on our repository if you're not familiar with it. All right. So with that, um, we have our little show notes for everybody to look at. It identifies the ticket, the PR, and then our summary of the issue. And so the goal here is to kind of pull out the relevant bits that we need to know, or that you need to
Sorry,
understand.
Tim. I think the zoom controls is obstructing the view a bit.
Oh,
All right, it's good now.
oh, okay. Thank you.
Cheers.
Yeah, so we have the episode notes here, and we try to identify the main pieces of information that you're going to need to understand to do a reasonable code review. So we sometimes some tickets can have a very long set of comments. This one is not one of those. We probably didn't need to summarize all the discussion, but we did. Sage, would you mind introducing the ticket as you understand it?
Oh, okay.
Right?
So,
Just getting put on the spot.
all right. So I think this is about the migrations feature in Django. And when you do migrations, uh, a migration in Django consists of different operations that we um, that we add to the operations list inside the migrations class. And so Django by default has built-in operations such as add field, remove field, and for example, also like create model. And these are the operations that will be performed on the database. That's what will be, that's how the changes will be made to your database. And migrations can be executed forwards and also backwards. So for example, if you add a field to your model and you run the sorry, if you just added the field to your model in the code and then you run make migrations, that's going to generate this migration file, which has this migration class and also a list of operations. And this is only the definition of what will be changed in your database, but it will not actually run until you execute the migrate command. And when you run python manage.py migrate, that's going to execute the operations in order. And so the operation has one second. So yeah, that's okay. Nice. Yes. So in here you see the SQL statements that will be executed when you run the migrations, and you can do that by using the SQL migrate command. And this is the forward operation, which is the changes that will be made to the database. But an operation can also have the backwards operation.
Sorry, I never remember if it's backwards or reverse.
Right. Yeah. So this is the reverse or like the backwards operation of that same migration. So for a create model operation, which translates to creating a table on the database, the reverse operation will be, the backwards operation will be dropping the table. And yeah, if you change the field name of a model, that means the reverse will be changing the field name back to the original name before the change. And the ticket is about...
Yes. Pull that back up.
Right. So the ticket is about the backward operation for a remove field, which removes a field from your model. And it doesn't allow a default value if the field is not null. So it also has the null equals false in the definition. So yeah, as you can see in the description, the backward operation will break if the database is populated, because if you reverse if you reverse a remove field operation, that's going to add the field back. But currently, with this ticket still open, the issue is that the field will be added, but it will not have any values, even if you have a... Wait, one second. Is it when it has a default, like, is it ignored? Or
So I think the default in the past was used. I think this is about catching the cases where there isn't a default
right.
and yeah, trying to alert the user like, hey, your
Ah,
backwards migration won't work.
right. Yeah, so currently Django will just proceed to create the migration, and if you try to run it, Django will not have any handling, and it's just going to break, I suppose, if you try to run the reverse operation, because yeah, it adds the column, but um, it cannot populate the column. So yeah, it's going to trigger the not null constraint on the column.
Yeah, yeah. Databases are tricky like that where they expect if you say it's not null, you can't create a column with all nulls. Um, okay. Thank you for that overview. Let me get rid of that. Yeah, I don't know. So the discussion here I thought was pretty interesting. Florian and Simon had a discussion, I think this was years ago, but basically they wanted to do a very similar thing as like with add field, where if you try to add a new field on a table that also has rows and you're adding a field that is not null, that it pauses and says, hey, this is going to fail when you run the migration if you don't specify default or set a value for all the rows as this column is being added, or you have to make this a nullable column. And then I think there's also the option to just say, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Ignore this, Django. And so Florian pointed out that we should be able to do this in the reverse direction too, of having somebody be aware of this when you're creating the remove field operation, that we could slow the person down and say, like, is this really what you want to do? Um, that really stuck out to me. Um, but yes, so we have the PR now. All right. Yeah. So this one is a I think Devil's Autumn is also a Djangonaut space person. Um, I believe they rebased it on or based this on this other PR from Marcus.
From 2016.
Yeah, that's a little old. Um,
And the ticket is even older.
9 years.
yeah. All right. Do either of you have a recommendation on how we want to proceed with this? So it looks like there's been a fair amount of review on this already. Uh, did I haven't looked at it that thoroughly, but also I trust these 5 people quite a bit. Did either of you look through the code ahead of time?
Only like I only skimmed it for a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there are different ways you can approach a PR. You can just jump straight into the code, or um, like uh, either look at the implementation, or sometimes it's also useful to look at the test first, to because sometimes the test describes what is expected, right? And it also demonstrates the issue, which ideally the test should fail before the fix is implemented. So that means we can prove that there's this issue that you can see by running the test, and after the patch is added, um, the test will pass. So yeah, um, you can either look at the implementation, or in some cases, it's useful to look at the tests so that you know where to start.
That's a good idea. I like that. Raffaella, any things that you want to check out, review, make sure we touch on?
Uh, I think I noticed, even because I also saw the previous PR that it was open but closed at a certain point, and I I think I noticed that MySQL is populated with the and not raise an error that you probably will will expect it in this kind of operation, I think,
Okay.
inside the test.
Yeah. I am here. I remember when I was looking through, so all right, check SQL. Is that roughly right? Check the
Okay,
SQL of operation.
test operation.
The test. Okay.
Test remove field and non-nullable.
Yeah, and I think that issue was specific to MySQL. So
Yes.
yeah, you might encounter cases where a different behavior is observed on certain database backends. And in this case, on MySQL, um, according to the comments here, um, MySQL populates not null columns with implicit defaults. Like I'm assuming, for example, if you have a text field or a chart character field without a default, and you add a column with not null constraint, instead of failing, MySQL will just populate the column with like empty strings, for example.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's also very useful to have the, I think it's Docker Django develop project or
Yeah,
um,
I don't trust Linux to run Docker and Zoom at the same time for me.
yeah.
That's gonna crash immediately.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you should run it right now, but yeah, if you're trying things out on your own, it's very useful to use that as the starting point, um, because it has all the databases set up for you, so that you can run the tests with different database backends. So yeah, if you write a test, um, and then you run it with one database backend, sometimes it would just fail on some others. Although, yeah, if it's not a feature that's um, like directly related to the databases, it's usually the same. You won't have any differences in all of the databases. So just running it on a single database is fine. And you can also just let the Django CI do the work.
No,
But obviously, um, in cases where you actually implement a feature that works differently on different databases, you would want to run the test locally as well.
no. So yeah, the URL it's Django slash Django dash Docker dash box. We'll put it in the show notes. I'll add it to the episode notes as well. Yeah. But I find I'm a little surprised that there's a check for the vendor here. Because what you were explaining kind of sounded like this isn't going to error. So this wouldn't have, it would never raise the integrity error here. Oh, never mind. This is the test. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I thought this was in, okay. Yep. My
Yeah.
mistake. This makes a lot
Also,
more sense.
yeah, but that's a good point though, because sometimes you also don't want to specifically check for the vendor here because um, Django also supports custom database backends, which are not in the Django package itself, and it can be implemented as a separate package. And if you create such database backends, you also want to run the test, um, like the whole Django test suite with your database backend. And if we have like special cases like this inside the test itself, and if you're writing a database backend that also has the same behavior as MySQL here,
Mhm.
uh, since we hard code the vendor here, um, it's not going to pass. Like the test will fail right here because, um, yeah,
Right.
it's hard coded in the test. And in some cases, Django avoids this by having what's called the database features flag. So
Hmm.
inside your database backend code, we have a list, not a list, well, um, we have a bunch of attributes on the uh, database features class. I think it's in features.py.
Uh,
Yeah, that one. Yeah, so these are like the default flags for all database backends. And if you build your own database backends, you can subclass this database features and set the flags appropriately. And then you can use this flag to check in the test instead of checking specifically for the vendors. But what gets a flag is not everything gets a flag here, because there's a lot of different um, behaviors and just quirks, I guess, of
yeah.
each database backend, that it's not worth it if you have all of them as flags in here. So yeah, in some cases, there's also, I think, if you scroll down a bit more, uh, up, if you scroll up just a bit, yeah, there's Django test expected failures and also Django test skips that you can use to point to the specific test that you would want to uh, skip or expect it to fail um, for your database backend, so that you don't have to um, patch Django itself to skip the tests.
Okay. Wow. I had no idea that existed. Um, yeah. Okay. I was gonna say, is there a reason, like, should it using like a decorator on this of
Yeah,
where,
normally you would check like connection.features dot um, the feature flag name, but
oh, I meant more, I've seen it in the past where there's a decorator here of saying skip if,
right.
um,
Oh, yeah. So Django also has skip unless DB feature and also skip if DB feature, which I think is just a wrapper around the built-in unit test, skip if and skip unless. Um,
that's the test for it. Okay.
yeah, uh, you might need to. I think if you look for it using camel case instead of um, snake case.
Ah,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a handy wrapper around the built-in skip if and skip unless that automatically uses like the database features. And so you just need to pass the string of the feature flag to the decorator.
So there's nothing, okay. Okay. For some reason, I was thinking like it would be possible if we're gonna do a check on the vendor, um, like this, there would be a decorator that, annotates the test method, and would say
Um,
like valid vendors.
um, I don't think Django has a specific decorator for that, but I think it should be fairly simple to just use the built-in unit test skip if. So for example, you would do at skip if, and then you put the condition in there, which is like connection.vendor uh, equals MySQL, for example. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay. All right. Well, we've talked about that quite a bit here, which
yeah,
is a very small part of the PR.
exactly.
Cool. All right. Uh, do we want to take some time and like 5, 10 minutes and read through the code? Do we want to dive into like running the tests? What are both of you thinking?
Um, I think I saw you have a local, like small project to demonstrate the issue. Maybe it's easier to do that. And
Okay.
yeah, so we want to make sure that the issue is still there and not like, um, because in some cases the issue might be fixed somewhere in some other PR, and it's just the ticket hasn't been updated.
Okay. Anything we should do before that, Raffaella?
Before starting the project, the example that you have in mind.
To show I think Sage is suggesting is we go through the problem case and kind of show what the problem is in Django that this ticket was created for, and then we can from there just, pull the latest from the PR and confirm like, all right, did this work in the most simple of cases?
Yeah, I think also the inside the PR just make some example of, but I think it's more useful if we can see the difference between.
Sounds good. All right. Um, okay, so I have this little example app. I use it for a bunch of other things. It actually a little bit based on Django models. I don't know if I even have any data. Um, it should be all caught up. So I want to add. Okay, so I'm going to add this index field to question. I think yeah. So this is on the add side, which is fine. Let's go ahead and 10. And so, yeah, as a foreshadowing, this is what one of those comments was from, I think, forget who. Um, they were talking about this preserve default. So we've added that. I don't know if I have Shell Plus installed. I do, which is from Django-extensions. And then I have IPython, which makes things a lot easier. It automatically imports stuff. And so I did it on question. I've already forgotten what fields are on this. Text, update, index. Okay. So now we should have an object. Of course. Cool. We have an object, we have a row there. So that should be enough. And we said we were gonna remove the field. So we have now a remove field. And now the case that they were talking about is if we try to go back to 004, it should break. Yes, there we go. And so I'm running SQLite with this for if anyone was wondering. But yeah, so it failed here on not null constraint failed because we have that row that I originally created up here. That's actually, I'm curious what that SQL is. It's 5. Yeah. I always forget SQL has to drop the whole table and like recreate. Yeah, so it's recreating this index is not null, and then when it inserts, yeah, it's literally trying to insert null into it, which would explain why it fails. Right. So what is the best way to go backwards from this? Suppose maybe we can do is delete the database.
That works.
Right. So now we want to use, okay, I'm skipping a few steps. So now we want to use the code from the PR in my local project to run through that same use case and see what is different. Um, and so to do that, in GitHub, oh, it's up right there. I just clicked on something. So GitHub provides this nice little GitHub CLI, and there's other ways you can do it with Git. We're not going to go through that, but if you're curious that you can do some research on Git. But for now, we'll run GitHub PR checkout. And so it switched us to this branch that should be from Devil's Autumn. So we're on the right thing. So now this Django folder for me has the latest code, and we can install that package with pip with the -e. I don't know what -e actually does. I believe it means editable.
It does, yeah.
Okay.
So if you don't use -e, if you make further changes to the local copy of Django, like for example, if you switch between branches, you'll have to reinstall it. But if you have -e, it will automatically be updated.
Okay. See, I've never even tried installing a local instance of a package without -e like this, so I've never ran into that, I guess. But okay, so now we've installed the dev version. And we're gonna have to undo some of these. Or no, I can migrate to 4. There's all the other Django. We'll see if this breaks. I think it might. Oh, nope. Okay. Right. It's complaining because I removed the field.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So now should say we have it in our database. So now we're back to where we were before. Now if we remove the fields, we're going to use the same migration. Oh no, that's what we need to test. Is making that migration. There's our nice little message. Anyone have a suggestion on which one we use? Let's go with 1. Migrate. Okay. So it's still creating that column is not null, but this time instead of null, it's going to insert 15, which should do everything, right? Oh, yeah, all those other migrates were from Django, but the one we care about is right here. And so now if we migrate backwards again, so now we'll have the field. Sorry, gotta re-add the field to the model. So we've migrated backwards to where the question now has index back on it. And so we should see 15 as the value for index. And I
What was
believe
the original value before we dropped the column?
5. Yeah.
5, right?
So yeah. So I did Shell Plus and IPython, like it provides like the history. And so yeah, I forgot to. That's why I was immediately looking that up. Cool. So that piece looks like it works, which is really cool. I wonder, I want to look at that message again. So now I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a new developer. Like say you're just using Django for the first time. You don't really understand the relationship between models, migrations, and your database, like how they're all three moving parts. Is this going to be confusing? Because like it's not talking about your forward migration, it's talking about the backwards migration. Um, Not recommended to remove it, non-null. Migrating backwards. Okay. I don't know
This
if
is
you
very trivial, but I noticed a typo there. After the dot, after the first sentence, there's no space.
good catch. Right. Notes. You can show the GitHub suggestion feature.
Providing a default. Uh,
What's that, Raffaella?
I, 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 I saw inside the questionnaire that it's not. I, I think it should work. I don't know why. In the because I saw the ask not null removal that this message come from, and there's a dot, and then there's a okay. I noticed that it's not slash and for going in another for like for make the space.
I'm not sure I'm following. Should I be
Um,
looking at the code base?
yeah,
No,
I
no.
think yeah, I think
Sorry.
we can look at the typo in the code later after. But yeah, at least we've made a note for that. So yeah. So I guess right now we are trying to assess the clarity of the message for newcomers, especially. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, that was something that crossed my mind of that might be a little confusing. Um, I don't know if you can make this that much better. Remove a not nullable, non-nullable field. I mean, arguably this should be the to remove the non-nullable field, unless this has,
It might be based on the message for
yeah,
the other one. I forgot what that one was.
yeah, it's a minor thing. Um, because something needs to populate the existing rows when migrating backwards. Yeah, I wonder if like it's worth trying to like it's alluding to the fact that when you migrate backwards, you would be adding the field back, and that field needs to have some sort of say. I wonder if it's better for us to call that out explicitly of saying like rather than implying like, hey, the remove field when you migrate it backwards is going to add a field.
Yeah,
Do
because
we?
I think especially for newcomers, they might not know that you can even run migrations backwards. Like, yeah, so what does migrating backwards mean? Like, it may not be clear. So yeah, I get what you mean.
I don't know if it's worth making the change or like suggesting it. Like I don't know how verbose we should be here. Because I think like once you see this once and you understand it, like your own, I only ever look at like what these messages are. I don't read this anymore. Um, yeah. So I'm gonna put a note. We can come back to that.
Maybe it can be as simple as adding like the phrase. So, for example, this is just an example. This is because the database needs something to populate existing rows when migrating backwards, which will add the field back to the model or something like that.
Yeah, I think we would probably want to have, I agree. That is probably as simple as it could be, or as it needs to be, but I would probably put as a separate sentence
Yeah.
of like when migrating backwards, period. When you
Yeah.
migrate backwards, it's going to re-add the field. Um, hey, Shafia is here. Yeah, I think that would probably be, what did you say? So migrating. I think this is,
I think we're talking in terms of models and fields, so maybe re-add it to the model.
is that, but then, yeah, if you,
I'm not sure. Yeah, but yeah,
yeah.
it's just nitpicking.
Well, I'd actually feel kind of strongly about not using the word model there. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see what happens
Yeah.
when we get closer to it later. Okay, that satisfied my need to be worried about that aspect. Okay, so now we know we've confirmed that this works here. I think the other note we had was to force the test to fail to make sure the test is actually doing something, and then checking the SQL on the test. So should we move on to those?
Um,
Is there anything else we want to test in the application, the CLI?
well, I mean, you can also test each of those options, like what happens if you choose number two. But
That is true.
yeah.
I'm hoping that the test will have, like the unit test would have that.
Oh, yeah. That's
Um,
also a good point. Yeah.
I suppose we can review that for completeness. Um, right. So we said this is gonna be difficult. I think I'm gonna try going full screen. There we go. We're not gonna have the notes for now. So there are, hmm, okay. So test commands. I just want to see, is it worth switching out of this view?
I think it's the cogwheel icon at the top in the middle, in the sticky header. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, okay. This might be a little bit easier. Okay, so test migrations, not null field. Removable.
Yeah, you can see there's no space after the period. And this is using the, I'm not sure what the name is, but I tend to call it implicit string concatenation, where if you have a um parenthesis and then you have a bunch of strings in there without having a comma in between the strings, it will be automatically concatenated. But yeah, in here you don't have the space after the first sentence, so that's why we have the typo.
So the thing I wanted to show, where is it?
It's the
It's
first button, I think. Yep.
add a, no, this is the one I want. So add a suggestion here. I like this in GitHub because you hit this, it brings in the line, and then if we add the space, it does the diff for you. And then the person um say I don't, well, I'm not gonna have the ability to merge this, but like what it would look like then on the author's side is you'd have the ability to like batch all the suggestions up and commit them in one go, which is I think is really helpful on code bases where like there are going to be some nitpicky comments. Like this one doesn't deserve anything besides like the I don't think we need to comment anything besides, showing the suggestion of
Yeah,
hey, missing
it's
space.
very clear.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to add that. Um, okay. So I think, is this test checking the messaging?
Yeah, it captures the standard output.
Okay. So I don't know if this would do arc, which is good. Like this tests the CLI. I don't think this tests the actual functionality, like what you were saying earlier, Sage, of what happens when you type in 1, 2, or 3 and making sure like
Yeah,
the full integration.
I think that will be in test operations.
Okay. That's not removed.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting to see because now you can also infer the structure of the Django code base, which means that the CLI part is located in a separate part of the code base, and it's tested in different ways. So for testing the CLI, that's the only thing you do. You just test the what it prints and what happens if you input one of the options. And for the actual operations, you test it. You have a separate unit test that doesn't involve the CLI at all.
I think that makes sense, right? Raffaella, any uh
Uh, I would like to ask Sage so basically we have two type of tests. One with that involve CI and one who don't. Am I correct?
So one tests the CLI interface that pops up when you try to run make migrations, where it asks you the question, and it doesn't actually check, like for example, the SQL that's generated, and also whether it will raise an integrity error, for example. That part is not tested in the test commands that we just saw, and that yeah, we have a separate test for the migration operation itself, if that makes sense. I guess it will be clearer once we start reading the test for the operations.
yeah. So I was waiting to see if there was a follow-up question to that. So excellent. There is only one method here. I just wanted to see if it was, it's not exactly easier to read there. Cool. Okay, so this is the test operation. Okay, project state. I'm gonna ignore that for now. Create an operation model, must create the data. So like this is when we did our question with index equals 5. And which field we're removing? Wait, okay. That's funny.
Nice one.
Yep. All right, so migrate it forwards, which would remove the weight. And then this is what you were talking about, what we talked about earlier. For MySQL, it's going to ignore trying to confirm that it's going to error. So this is, so is this effectively testing that databases do error?
Yes,
Okay.
on databases other than MySQL.
Okay. That's interesting. It's like we are effectively, if one of those databases were to adopt MySQL's approach of having an implicit default instead of raising an error, we would then know about that in our main. Django would know about that because main would start breaking.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
Mm, So Sage, Probably in this case, it's we maybe could use the decorator that we talked about, or instead of checking for vendor.
Um, I think if we want to use the decorator, we'll need to have a database feature flag on the database feature class that we discussed earlier. And
Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure, like, the decision on what exactly gets added, like whether this justifies a feature flag, is something that's um, usually I might be wrong here, but I think it's made on a case by case basis. And yeah, if somebody has a particular concern, they would usually raise that during review, like whether this justifies a database feature flag or not. And the other reviewers will chime in and um, add their opinions. And if everybody, well, if it's agreed that it should have a database feature flag, then it will be added. Otherwise, yeah, you might see this specific vendor checks in the tests.
So is there a reason not for us not to adopt something like this where we're doing the check for PsychoPG 3 versus 2?
Right. I think uh, the only reason might just be that you'll have to write a separate test method for that. So you might have to duplicate the entire test and then remove the assert races.
Well, okay. So hold on. Let me skip if.
Connection.vendor.
Right. Well, so I mean, if we had a property here of, uh, so that would, I guess we don't want to skip the entire test. You're right.
Yeah.
It's
So
just that one part.
yeah. So you'll have to duplicate it or like structure it in a way that it's tested separately.
Which I don't know if that's really.
It's not a problem. Like it's perfectly okay to duplicate it, I think. Um,
Well, yeah, especially because like this part is doing. This is like a canary for how do databases work. This isn't I don't think this is evaluating anything with this change. It's just to see how do databases work in the future and do we need to make a change. So like should that be a separate test method? And I don't know enough about Django to know.
right. So I think one way to see it is this way. Let's see if we imagine removing the if check so that we only have the assert races. Yeah. So this is the behavior that we ideally want across all databases. So if you try to run it backwards, it's going to raise an integrity error. But yes, so like I in an ideal world, this is just how the test is.
Right, but I think my arg or my question is like this is do tests are tests supposed to be written where they serve one purpose? Because this is testing two things. One, it's testing the operation itself. Oh, I guess not. Okay, never mind. I'm getting confused here. I
So without the default, it will raise an error, and then
hmm
after you add the default, it doesn't. But yeah, since on MySQL, even if you don't specify the default, it doesn't raise an error. That's why we had the check. But I think one potential issue with this is that if MySQL in the future um, raises an error, Django will not know about it, which is not necessarily a problem. It's just that we have this check that end up not being used. And actually, is harmful if you now expect it to raise an error, because yeah, Django just ignores MySQL entirely when checking the integrity error.
Sorry, there was somebody joining.
I think I'm not sure if it's possible, but um, a a possibly better way to do this is to check that MySQL actually uses a um, a an implicit default, and maybe have that as a feature flag, like for example, uses implicit default for refers, or some sort of flag, right? And
Yeah.
then in the test, you actually do check that the um inserted uh, column like includes that implicit default, rather than just skipping this case specifically.
Yeah. So I think the point of this is more for third-party packages with database backend, implementing a database backend, which is the one that I can think of is Adam Johnson's MySQL one. Or
Not
there's or is
quite.
that MySQL?
Because MySQL is built in, and the Django MySQL package, it doesn't add the database backend. It just adds like features that are specific to MySQL, sort of like Django contrib Postgres.
Was Ryan. I was thinking of MySQL Django,
Oh,
but
sorry.
I also said Adam
Yeah,
Johnson, and yeah. Anyway,
yeah,
I thank you for the clarification on Adam Johnson's package. Um,
yeah.
so if if we're trying to make that experience better, if you, I'm trying to think of the case where if someone else has, if they're implementing this for a vendor where this would run because they don't have MySQL as connection.vendor, this rate does not raise the exception. Is it possible to catch that and ignore it, or like what is that?
Yeah, that's a good point. So what happens is that the test will fail because it doesn't raise the exception, and we are asserting that it actually raises. So it's unfortunate, but yeah. So they will have to explicitly skip this test or mark it as expected failure, which is not ideal. So um, yeah, either we break this down into separate cases, um, for example, with the default and without the default, and then so that at least you can break it down into two separate methods.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think ideally you would have a feature flag here. But usually, if it's like a very specific quirk, we don't add it until someone makes a case for it. Like they submit a PR, hey, can you make this into a feature flag, please?
Okay. Yeah, it
But
doesn't seem like it's used a lot, but it is used. So I
yeah,
think, yeah. Okay. Anyway, so I'm okay with not mentioning this. I think I would really like to have this in main, and rather than getting it bogged down on this particular topic.
I think, well, I don't know if there has already been conversations on GitHub about it. Um,
You know, it doesn't.
right.
Okay. I think we missed part of that code earlier. I suppose we could check the other PR, see if did this handle.
I think they use the same approach.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm leaning with wait for somebody to implement it. They can ask a question. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of cases like I don't think this is something Django needs to start fixing or like start addressing. Um, equals. Oh, oh, right. That, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it is quite. We have quite a few places where we do that check, so it's not uncommon.
Okay. Good old Oracle.
Yeah, if you count how many vendor specific checks, Oracle might be the winner.
Fun. Yes. Okay. So we have operation default, and then it confirms this is what we did earlier of confirming that it was 15 coming back, which is good. So if all those tests actually pass, that's a win. Um, yeah. Does this, where are we? You said not operations. Oh, this is the wrong PR. Getting lost. Is there a, what is test loader? No, I don't think there actually is a test for, so Sage, earlier you pointed out, um, do we need to test something for each one of these cases? That it translates into the right thing. But I wonder if that's part of the questioner. Ask not null. Yeah, where's the test for ask not null removal? Is this, I might be missing something.
So
This,
can we have a look at task commands again?
mhm.
So that's so yeah, it tests that with option 3, it raises system exit, which means it quits. And with option 1, you provide the default. And yeah, it doesn't test the second one, I think.
Mhm.
Oh wait,
Wait,
is it? What about? Yeah, wait, never mind. Yeah, I don't think it tests the second one. You would need another mock.patch for built-ins input with return value of 2.
I wonder if there's, is there another test that does this? That does something similar? Interactive, not null addition, not null removable. No, I don't think there is. Yeah.
I mean, I guess we can see how the test for the um, adding a new field without sorry, adding a new non-nullable field is,
Okay.
which should be a few lines above this. I think it
Yeah,
is this
it's
one? Yeah.
literally the one right above. So 2 quits, 1 provide default. Yeah.
And those are the only options. So yeah, ideally we should also have uh, some assertions for when you um, choose the second option for this one. Yeah.
So no, there is another one that, so this is the not null alteration. 3,
Okay.
1. Okay, so this is what it's mocked out or modeled
Yeah.
after.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it's possible to test. I think output. get value. Hmm.
Because then it should be a successful exit from the command.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if there's a way to capture the. So if you look at the questioner.py file,
Oh,
I
maybe.
forgot. Yeah, I think yeah. So I think for the second option, yeah, it just returns the
Not
value
provided.
not provided. I'm not sure if it's possible to check that value is like I'm not sure if you have access to that value from the test.
It does seem like we need to have a test here, though, in questioner tests. So like we have one test ask, not null, not
Oh yeah,
provided. So I think that's what we're missing is this
yeah,
test.
yeah. That's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay. So let's add that to the notes.
Can I ask you something?
Yep.
Inside the test command, there's a comment that says no message appears if try run.
Right. Yeah. So um, if you run when you run the make migrations command, you can have um, there's the dry run option, and I think it doesn't have any output if you use it. Like I mean, it's not going to ask you what to do, I think. So yeah, we can try that maybe.
I wanted to show what the description was first, which just show what migrations would be made, don't actually write them. So, wait, oh,
We still have the
yeah,
field.
whoops. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so that's going to be the same behavior as the previous one where so it's like the option 2 where it would just proceed with um, making the migration. But in this case, the migration file will not actually be created.
Are either of you familiar with use cases where dry run is common, like commonly used? Like
I think a common use case is to run it on CI to make sure that any model changes already have their corresponding migrations created.
okay.
So yeah, if you change the model without creating the migrations, um, that's bad because yeah, your migrations do not reflect the final state of your model, and you would want to detect that on your CI, so you can run the dry run migrations on
Yeah.
CI.
Okay. That makes sense. Mm. Anything else down that avenue, Raffaella?
Sorry?
Anything else on that topic that you wanted to ask or discuss?
No, I was wondering because I think this is the test about the questionnaire, and then we just see that the option 3 is tested, option 1 is tested, but then I noticed this type of dry run. So I was curious about this.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, yeah, because we just found like, hey, this method isn't tested, um, I'm now curious, like, what are the other changes doing? Um, so this deconstruct method on, so this is the remove field. Okay, so I'm going to imagine that this is very similar to, oh, this is the field operation, very similar to the add field operation of default not provided. Um, I do remember seeing this in test operations at the very end. It was confirming the deconstruct. Yeah, it was testing the deconstruct works. I find it interesting sometimes of how I never know how to write my tests of should I have a test for each single evaluation or should I combine the tests? Like, so like in this case, it's testing that the database, like the database actually migrates backwards. And like, is there an error or not? We test um, whether the default works. And then it's also testing deconstruct. And like this deconstruct seems a little out of place. Um, but also there's probably tens of thousands of tests in Django. Like, do we want to add another one?
Yeah, I think one of the other considerations is that to check the deconstruct, you will need to do the same setup. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and it's yeah, it's just not worth it sometimes.
That makes sense. Okay. That answers my question then of yeah. Yeah. No, there's no reason to run the same test setup. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. This is backwards. So this is what we were testing earlier. Um, I remember seeing a question from Sarah Boyce on how does database default work with this? And I don't, where is that? Oh, maybe it was, oh, apparently it was Lily. Um,
I think there's another thread somewhere. I forgot. Um,
see if we can find it.
Further down below, I think. Did you know that if you press Alt click on the show resolved, um, yeah, if you press, yeah, it's going to open every single thread.
I did
So
not know that.
yeah, so
Okay.
it's possible to Control F from that point.
Okay. So this was brought up. Is this a mark? I don't think this one's marked as resolved. So I think they are. Okay. I'm just trying to figure out like now with expanding all of them, which are the relevant conversations, which ones aren't. No, so that was marked resolved. So there should be a
I
test
think
that's
there's another one. There's another thread down below. I'm not sure why it's not. Uh, I
okay.
can see it on my. I think it's the first review from Lily.
This one,
Yeah, yeah, exactly that. Yeah,
it re-adds database default. Do we um I think we might want to go check to see how adding a database default works. Like how do we test that? Like do we actually inspect
I mean,
um
I think
I guess it would be part of the remove field, wouldn't it? That wouldn't be part of this.
yeah, um, yeah. It well, I think so. The way you would add a DB default is at the point of the add field operation, right? And then when you do a remove field, it should look at the DB default before the removal happens and make sure that it's actually used. And I think it might already be handled um, because, well, it's just going to reuse the previous definition.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. This has that shouldn't be related. That shouldn't be related to this PR
I think
because
so.
when they added support for DB default, that's when you would need to cover remove field. I wonder if you would you ever have a default and a different DB default? I mean, not logically you shouldn't, but do we break on that?
That's a good question.
So now
I'm not sure if Django allows you to do that.
yeah. SQLite support DB default?
Oh, so I think I'm currently reading the documentation. Um, so you can have both DB default and field default, and the plain default will take precedence when you create instances in Python code, but DB default will still be set at the database level, or when you add for things like when you add a new field in a migration.
Oh, shoot. I did this backwards. Please no one take any notes on how to manage your database through this example. This is not what you're supposed to do. So now we've added. Okay, it didn't give us the warning because we have the default set, which is cool. That's something we did not test. Adding, okay. That all makes sense. Default 10, not null. Okay. That is kind of interesting. It is, all right. So it's using 10. What did we, so default was 0, DB default is 10. So it's going to, I don't know if that really matters to us, but it looks like it's going to be using the database default for the migration.
Yeah, because the default, the old default, not the DB one, it's never reflected in the SQL statement as the default clause. It previously was just computed in the application level, like on the Django level. And by the time it gets to the SQL query, it's just the value, for example, 0 or 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose if you wanted to, if you wanted to over, I'm just thinking like eventually someone's gonna be like, no, I don't want the DB default. I want the default. Can you just set it that way? No. I feel like you should, right? Maybe it's because it's falsy. Nope. That's interesting.
I think it's consistent with the documentation that says the DB default will still be set and it will be used for inserting rows or like when adding a new field in a migration, because technically when you reverse a remove field, that's going to be an add field. So yeah, the plain default is only uh, it only takes precedence when you create instances in the Python code, but when it comes to migrations or if you somehow insert the row outside of the ORM, it's still going to be used. Yeah, I'm not entirely familiar with the DB defaults, so I might be
Right.
wrong.
No, I'm not suggesting that we have this wrong. Okay. All right. All right. I think I'm getting a better understanding of it. I think in the case if someone did want to override this, it's probably going to be, oof, yeah, that would be weird. Like maybe a separate database and like the separate model state and database. Yeah, that would not be fun. Okay. Anyway, that's a very,
What they could do is update the previous migrations where the DB default is added and change the value from there, I suppose. Or yeah, use the
yeah.
separate database and state. Maybe I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, um, okay. So we checked that auto detector. Do we need an explicit test for this? Do we have one? Think I don't think we have a test explicitly for this, but I don't know if we need one.
Um, can we have a look at how the test operation is set up again? Okay. Hmm.
So it's going through the happy flow.
Yeah.
We're not excuse me, evaluating all the cases of this if statement. I was wondering if maybe somebody else on this call or on the video in the chat wants to comment in, but we'll see. Um,
So there is a test auto detector file, but I don't see it in the PR, so I'm not sure if there should be a test there. This is a very long file, I think.
yeah, probably not worth going. So I think the other way to go about it is, could we find a similar evaluation or similar code and see if it's tested extremely thoroughly or not? See, maybe this one instead. I don't know. I'm just guessing it. Okay, that's what we just added. Well, that's the only one that does that. Okay, so there's some logic here. Added field. Hmm. My brain's turned into mush.
I'm currently looking at the same code as well, trying to find whether um, Yeah, that might be it.
That going to be in here somewhere.
Yeah, so I found 1 second. Test add not null field with, yes, this one.
Yeah, this doesn't look like it's covering every single possibility. So I think we're good. I think the PR is fine, in my opinion. I don't, what do each of you think?
Um, I would probably have a look at um, the previous, like how we initially added, for example, like adding a field without the default with a null equals false, and like whether that has a test in the auto detector.
Okay.
Because yeah, even though we can test it manually, but it would be nice to actually have the test in the auto detector, because that's a crucial part. That's what links the test commands, the bit that tested the command line and the bit that tested the operation, because both can still pass if the auto detector didn't work, I think.
This might be a rough code change to look through. So you don't. So that's pretty clear. And so this is the PR where database defaults was added. And yeah, it was one test. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Sage. These two tests from when the
So I guess
DB.
what you can look for example, in the test auto detector, you can look for mentions of the questioner. Yeah, so that would be testing the cases where it would normally um, very like run the questioner. And yeah, I I think it would take some time, but I would go through all these existing tests and then think how essential it is, like to have a similar test for this PR.
All right. I think we're probably, I don't know how much longer both of you want to go looking at this. Um,
I do need to take a 5 minute break in sometime in the next 30 minutes, if possible.
I was actually suggesting maybe we wrap things up now.
That works for me.
Raphael,
Yeah,
any last minute questions?
I think we just cover lots of with this PR.
Yeah. Okay. I agree. That was a really deep dive into the code. I don't think we've gone looked at the code that much in the past, or definitely I've never ran that many things in the terminal for one of these before. Um, okay, so the notes that we have, so we already added that one, so that's done. Uh, Not deleted. Um, right, the note about migrating backwards if we want to try to be a little bit more clear, because that is a potentially advanced topic, or like it's not a clear topic at least for beginners. Um, Adding a test for that's similar to ask not null, alteration not provided. I think that's probably a requirement. And then we have some extra homework to do. Uh, um, yeah. Anything else that we missed?
I don't think so.
Maybe just read the docs, the, but
Oh
they're
yeah,
really
that's a
small.
good point. Yeah, maybe we can
I
quickly look at the docs preview, maybe.
okay. Do scroll up.
I think if you Control F for read the docs um, without spaces. Hmm. I had it open. 1 second, let me.
Yes, please help.
Huh, where is it?
I do think the docs change are fairly minimal. We could
Yeah.
probably look at the
Okay, so this is the build, but I haven't got the exact page up. Should be in reference. Yeah,
yeah, but it's missing. This is this is the old version. Um, so, so- yeah, why didn't this?
hmm.
Oh, let's try that. Change
Yeah,
it to the right PR. There we go.
yeah, nice. It looks different to the actual docs though, because this is the one that's hosted on Rate the Docs.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me.
I think make the I think this might be two.
Two, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one. Yeah.
Operations.
Well, um, I guess it's because there's already a to before that. So to populate
Uh,
and make.
yep, you're right. Raphael, any thoughts on this?
I try to read once or twice, so I think it's probably clear. I don't know if it's clear because I know what is going on or because but I think it's also easy to read.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the first sentence saying bear in mind, eh, having that in the documentation, I think justifies having more explanation in the message because
Hmm.
it's something that may not be immediately clear.
Yeah, I wonder if this actually, like, rather than having the first part of the sentence be bear in mind that when, like, should this
Yeah,
be when reversing when reversing a remove field operation, this is actually adding a field to the model, where like it might be easier to pick out visually if you're skimming it.
Okay, we are also reviewed because I saw in the review just the um, last three row that it was updated because the first sentence is from it was just a bit already there.
oh yeah.
Hmm.
So Ryan said adding a field back to the model. Yeah, this is also like weird. This is kind of when reversed, it's not doing anything to the model, it's doing it to the table. And like even down here, it says recreated column. So should this be actually, this is actually uh, adding a column back to the table.
I think if we want to evaluate the field versus column terminology, I would have to read through the other operations docs to make sure it's consistent. Maybe there is no
Yeah, I don't know if
consistency.
there is, but like I think it's a oh, yeah, because we call it remove field, which makes sense. But at the same time, if we're saying what actually happens,
We're
hmm,
either saying about, we're either talking about what actually happens or what the reverse operation is in terms of operations and models, fields, and so on. So yeah, it's documentation is not easy.
no, no, it is not. We have another comment, another thought. It will ask for a default value to populate. So it will ask to provide a default value. So instead, it will ask for a default value to populate. Type both of these out. I do think the latter probably makes a little bit more sense.
And more concise as well.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. That is from our chat, and I do not know how to credit you, but thank you. Oh, okay. Sweet. Okay, so ignoring the field and model concept here, I do like Ryan's opinion of saying adding a field back to the model. Do we want to suggest changing this part? I wasn't sure where both of you landed on starting a sentence like that.
Yeah, I think the starting of this sentence is strange, but he, mm, mm, I don't know if there's mm, any other thoughts in mind when he was hard to that. Maybe we can just propose a suggestion. I don't know if maybe this could also be related with this PR.
I don't mind changing the first sentence, but I also don't mind leaving it as is.
Okay.
So yeah, but I do agree that um, I think the fact that the existing documentation has that emphasis on what happens when you reverse the operation, I think that justifies adding more explanation in the uh, command line.
In the command output, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. That's actually a really good argument that yeah. Do you want to leave that comment, Sage, of
sure. Yeah,
all right, cool. So I'm gonna put you down, Sage. Raffaella, do you want to add, since I already added a comment, do you want to add a comment about adding a test and test questionnaire similar to test not ask? So, um, sorry, I'm trying to pull this up. Test questionnaire.
Yes.
So the test questionnaire file has a test here under the questionnaire tests. And this is for not null alteration not provided, which is what, sorry, where is that?
60.
There was, oh, I mean, I'm all over the place right now. Okay, so in questioner, there's this not provided choice, which we don't have a test covering that. And so ask not null removal is very similar to I'm in the wrong file. There's ask not null alteration. So like this one is very similar to our not null removal. And in test questioner, there's a test for this not provided case that wasn't covered in test command. Did I explain that well enough?
I'm
Nope.
still a
I
bit
saw the smile. Okay.
sorry.
Nope. I am not explaining this well. All right. So we have test commands here. We have comments here of like which, so it prompts the user for which input they should enter and like what happens. And so this test covers 3 and 1, but there's nothing for 2, which is ignore for now,
Okay.
make this potentially not reversible, which is the not provided. But that test should exist on test questioner of like this, like test not Yeah, I think this is like what we need to add.
But we have this test inside um, the, the, mm, the test command just is similar, no? Or no?
No, well, it's similar in that it's testing the other two returns from like when the user gets prompted. It tests for 1 and 3, but we don't have a test for 2. And so we need to add this test explicitly to test questioner to cover that option. And it would match how we do things for when we alter a field that's not nullable, which is this other test method.
Hmm. Okay, can I read you what I wrote to understand if it's understandable?
Yes, 1 second. Let me finish this. Okay, yeah. If you want to put it in the chat.
Oh yeah, better. So
Inside the test questioner, you should write a similar test. I would add inside the test questioner.py file. And we should write a test similar to, yeah, that method name to cover the
the case
yeah, or the case, yeah, to cover not provided case, to cover the not private case. Yeah.
case where
Oh, that discussion we had earlier of adding a field to the model, that is not even in the changes here. So
Yeah, that's why I.
yep, probably shouldn't be making that suggestion then. That is not, yeah, not our place. All right, check. Got that. All right. I think that's everything. Inside test question, we should write a test similar to test ask not null cover.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that's thorough enough that they will understand that points them in the right direction, points out that, hey, we're testing the not provided case. I think they will understand, like, hey, these are very two similar paths.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So then when both of you are ready to submit those comments.
Oh,
Oh, we do it now?
sorry,
Yeah,
I
yes.
just made.
Okay.
So, are we both ready? So there's a little thing, Sage, that I don't know if you've seen the ends of how these space reviewer episodes go, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So there's when you push review or submit, you got to scream. So
One
everybody else.
second. I'll need to find. Wait. Wait. Explicit mention. Oh.
Oh, sorry.
So that's in. Okay. Wait,
Sorry, team. This time I just accidentally pushed the comment button before everyone.
Ooh.
I
It's
will
just
join you anyway
okay.
for the celebration.
Yes, celebration. Not nervous at all.
all right.
Okay.
I'm ready.
All right. I'm just gonna submit this without approve. All right. Raphael, you want to count us down? So
3.
after one, it's a scream.
Sorry, I was I was understand if I have to count down.
Yes, please.
3, 2, 1.
Ah!
Ah!
All right. Well, okay. I think that's everything. We have a couple extra notes that we'll add in. I think, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if we have anything else to say.
I just want to say I really enjoyed this. It's been great, and you both did a great job. Like, especially you, Tim, like trying out all these on an actual project, like running things. Yeah, it's really useful to see the issue and like replicate it and verify that the fix actually works. So yeah, thank you for doing
Yeah.
that.
If I can, I would like to also thank you, Sage, because you really uh, know where we can find something that it could be useful for example, the where to find inside the test, or for example, the flag if it's needed. It was really I really enjoyed it. Also because you did um, a great suggestion for us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I don't know if
yeah.
we can have the on the slide of we're not all experts. I think yeah, you were answering quite a few expert level questions there, Sage. I think yeah.
Oh, that's what spending too much time on the code base do to you. But yeah, we'll get there eventually. So yeah.
Yes. Cool.
Yes, with your lead.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. If anyone's watching this in as a contributor to Django and you want to be a navigator for Djangonaut Space, please reach out to contact@djangonaut.space. We are always looking for more navigators for Django or third-party packages within Django. But other than that, yeah, take care. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.